Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the September 28th Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. I am your chair, Councillor Silovitz, and I want to welcome everybody back from summer break. I hope everybody had a very good summer. Accessibility Advisory Committee meetings are being held in a hybrid meeting format at this time. The public can observe meetings of council and committees by attending in person in the council chambers or by viewing the live stream of the open session part of the meetings, which can be accessed on the city's website or on the city's YouTube page. Please note, we have received regrets from Barry Munro for this afternoon's meeting. We have a couple of committee members who are not present. Hopefully they will join us. The public had the opportunity to submit written correspondence regarding agenda items by email to the clerk's office. All written correspondence received by noon yesterday would have been included on the agenda, but there were none received. The public also had the opportunity to apply to appear as either an in-person or electronic delegation by noon yesterday to be included on the agenda, but no delegation requests were received. As chair of the committee, I now call the meeting to order. First on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Could I have a committee member please raise their hands if they wish to adopt the agenda? You? Thank you very much. Okay. All in favor of adoption of the agenda? All in favor? Yeah. Anybody opposed? Nope. Oh, there's Councillor Davidson. Thank you for joining us. No one opposed. That passes unanimously. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Nope. Anybody? None. Thank you. So for item 4.1 is the minutes of our previous meeting. Minutes Accessibility Advisory Committee held June 8th, 23. And A is that the minutes of Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting AACO 223 held June 8th, 2023 be adopted. I assume everyone's read the minutes. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments? No, we're good? Okay. And who would like to move that? Anybody? Anybody? There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Simon. Okay. So Simon moves that. And do we have all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. We have no delegations today. And we have three main items that are scheduled for today's meeting, and they are all presentations by staff. So I'm looking very forward to see these presentations and have some good discussion coming from committee as well. So if we go to scheduled business 6.1, Richmond Hill's age-friendly community strategy presented by Karen Ash, manager, recreation programs. Please note this is a 15-minute presentation. Ms. Ash, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Welcome. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my presentation today. It's great to be here and to see everybody and to see some familiar faces as well. So we've been working together with the community, with staff and council, and with local community organizations and groups since the beginning of the year. So it's very exciting to be at the point where we're presenting our age-friendly community strategy. The strategy is going to committee of the whole on October 4th for council review and hopefully approval. So my mission today is to give you a brief overview of the study of our process, some high-level findings, and then I'll review, do an overview, a high-level review of the strategy. Of note, there is also an accompanying internal implementation plan that has been prepared for staff, so that will come forward with the plan as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the project, the process, and of course our direction going forward, and I'll do my best to answer questions that you have today. Go ahead. And one more. Thanks. So our purpose for the age-friendly community strategy, the city is taking steps towards becoming an age-friendly community. To achieve this goal, the City of Richmond Hill embarked on the process of developing this strategy as part of Council's strategic priorities in 2020 to 2022 to create a strong sense of belonging. Next slide. Thanks. This slide outlines the process that we followed in completing the work on the strategy. So we got started in late 2022, early 2023, with doing some research and some background and some engagement to get things going, and collected some information and some data on the project. For phase 2, we defined our current state. So we looked at what existing policies and procedures we had in place. We looked at an age-friendly needs assessment, which was completed by the city in 2022. And we did some analysis and looked at some trends and some data. Phase 3, we engaged with the community, and I'll speak a little bit more to that throughout the presentation. And we also attended meetings with our newly formed age-friendly community council. So that's an exciting group that we have going. And then phase 4 is completing the strategy. So that work is now done, and we're excited to be at the point where we're presenting the strategy. The framework for the strategy. So age-friendly community strategies. Our framework is based on the World Health Organization's Age-Friendly Cities Framework. And this proposes 8 interconnected domains that can help identify and address barriers to the well-being and participation of older people. So there's 8 icons there that speak to or sort of demonstrate the domains, and I'd like to just share with you what they are. So the first one is our outdoor spaces and buildings, and that includes parks, green spaces, and public buildings such as our municipal office, our community centers, and our libraries. Transportation is the next one, and that includes our access to public transportation, as well as thinking about things like signage and traffic lights and sidewalks. Housing includes a full range of housing: apartments, townhouses, detached homes, as well as supportive housing options, retirement homes, long-term care facilities, and as well as affordable options and accessible housing options. Respect and social inclusion includes people's sense of feeling respected and included in their community. Community support and health services includes mental and physical health programs, access to a doctor, dental care, and mental health services. Civic participation and employment includes the ability to work, to volunteer, and to be engaged in community life. Communication and information includes the access to the information about community events and services, and ensuring that these formats are appropriate and accessible to for older adults and persons with disabilities. And then the final domain is social participation. So this includes a level of involvement and participation in recreation activities, fitness activities, and cultural activities and events. The current policy framework. So I have shortened our presentation. We did look when we were doing our research and our data collection for our project, we looked at different policies that already exist. At the senior government level, there's an Age-Friendly Communities Canada policy that's in place. Ontario has an action plan for seniors that was done in 2017. York Region also completed a senior strategy in 2016, and that update is underway. So the region's also doing some work. And then in terms of local policies, we looked at what Richmond Hill has to offer, and we've got our strategic priorities, our official plan, a pedestrian and cycling master plan, our affordable housing strategy, our parks plan, our recreation and culture plan, and a transportation master plan that's underway. So there's lots of work that's being done, and we really wanted to have a fulsome look at what was already happening and making sure we were incorporating all of that in our work. The next slide. As part of our research as well, we also looked at a number of data indicators, including demographics, a range of household and health indicators, as well as income and housing need. You'll remember that this data is being shared. Oh, it wasn't. Yeah. So this is data that we have shared. So we'll go through it fairly quickly. Next slide. This one's a bit hard to read. I apologize. That's population by age. So the seniors in the 65 plus age group comprise 17.2% of Richmond Hill's population in 2021. And this is an increase from 14.6% in 2016. Comparatively, Richmond Hill has a younger population than the province and a slightly older population than York Region. Seniors make up 18.5% of Ontario's population and 17% of York Region's residents. So looking at the adult 55 plus, this group comprised nearly 32% of our total population in 2021. And on the chart, again, I apologize, the numbers are small, but it's sort of the dark green bars to the right, on the right side of the chart. The next slide. So these are our senior population projections, and it's anticipated to increase from 36,700 in 2021 to 58,539 by 2031. So this is a 59.4% increase over a 10-year period. And it's estimated to further increase to 69,000 people by 2036. So our aging population is going to grow. And then just a few other demographic trends that were interesting that we wanted to include in our presentation. 21% of seniors do not speak English or French. And this is from our 7,200 seniors that are in Richmond Hill. So that's one piece, is the language. 29% of our seniors are living alone. That highlights our potential for isolation and social inclusion. Many of those seniors do live in family households without children or live in family households with children. The average income for our seniors is below 40,000. And 3,000 of our seniors were in poverty in 2020. And seniors continue to be the largest group waiting for subsidized housing in York Region, making up about 54% of the applications on the waiting list. And their waiting time can be an average of 9 years for social housing. 19% of our senior households were in core housing need. And that means that their current housing is unaffordable, inadequate, or unsuitable. So those are some of the trends that our seniors in Richmond Hill are facing. And then a few other trends, a bit more positive. Our seniors are remaining employed beyond 65. Many of them are relying on the internet to gain information. Some of our seniors are remaining in their own homes longer. And there is an increase in seniors relying on specialized transit services. So there's a few more trends that we wanted to share. So we reached out and connected with several community members, organizations, and businesses throughout our work. We did an online survey. We held focus groups with our age-friendly community council, with staff, and with community organizations. We did some community roundtables as well as a community workshop. We had over 800 participants in our 2021 needs assessment and almost 300 in our community engagement through this project. So we do feel like we got a good understanding of the experiences and input from our residents of the older adult group. These are our key messages that came forward throughout that community and for community engagement, as well as our trend analysis. So some of these key messages: we want to reduce barriers to transportation, and that included affordability, accessibility, and flexibility. Improve our safety of the streets, trails, and sidewalks. And we did do a fair amount of our engagement in the winter months. So we heard lots about snow clearing and access to the streets and the sidewalks in the winter. We want to increase housing options for seniors, increase our community outreach and engagement, access to community information, expansion of our seniors programs through our Recreation and Culture Division and through the city, and improve health navigation and access to healthcare services. So we are looking through, especially through the Recreation and Culture Division, at how can we provide opportunities for our seniors to socialize and to connect? What can we do that's affordable or free? Multi-generational programming is always of interest to our community, as well as cultural programming. So we're excited to share that the community strategy is going to be presented to council in the upcoming week. The next slide outlines the vision for that strategy. So we want Richmond Hill to be an inclusive, accessible, and welcoming community where all ages and abilities enjoy an active and healthy lifestyle. The next slide talks about the principles that are included in our strategy. We have 4 key principles that are guiding the work of the strategy. We're achieving the vision for an age-friendly community is a collective responsibility that requires partnerships and collaborative action. So we won't be working in isolation as we go through our strategy implementation. Programs, services, and supports will be person-centered and aimed at achieving inclusive and supportive environments for all residents. The city is accountable to report back to the community and responsive to changing needs and priorities. So this is a 5-year plan, and we will be adapting it if needed as we go through. It needs to be we need to provide equitable access to programs, services, and facilities. Minimizing barriers to participation is at the core of all of our planning. So there's our icons again with the 8 domains from the World Health Organization. The strategy document includes 21 recommended action items presented in that framework for the World Health Organization. The implementation is over a 5-year timeframe and will be a collective responsibility, as I've said, that requires partnerships and collaborative action. The complete list of the strategies and additional details are in the strategy document that is linked to the committee of the whole agenda for next week. So I wanted to today just go through a few of our actions that are in the short term. If we can flip to the next slide. Perfect. So some of these actions we're going to try and tackle as soon as possible and get going. So through parks design, we want to continue to ensure that parks, trails, and open spaces are accessible and encourage activity for all ages. We want to share information with current transit needs of Richmond Hill residents and York Region. Incorporate a complete street framework in the transportation master plan, and that complete street framework involves a well-connected, sustainable transportation network that's friendly for pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and transit users. So it's a big scope. Sharing information and resource on programs and services that support social connection and inclusion. So making sure that we're really reaching out to all of our older adults and sharing all of the information about all the great things that are going on in Richmond Hill and providing opportunities for them to get involved. We will partner with local organizations and community partners to continue to coordinate our Seniors Month celebrations, which take place in June, and reestablish our Seniors Fair. We're looking forward to bringing that back in 2024. It's been paused. So those are a few of the short-term actions that we're hoping to tackle right away and build into our work that we're doing. So in addition to the 21 recommendations that was just shared or that are included in the document, I shared a few of the high level recommendations. We also want to ensure that we have a systems approach to our age-friendly planning. So there are a few additional recommendations that are aimed at establishing some key structures within the city to support the implementation and successful achievement of our strategy. The AFCC is our Age-Friendly Community Council, and that's a group of 20 residents, business, and community group representatives that get together to work on the implementation now of our age-friendly community strategy. We want to incorporate the recommendations of the strategy into our city department work plans as appropriate. We will be developing an age-friendly checklist or framework to apply at that age-friendly lens to all of our decision-making across the city. We'll continue to monitor the strategy. There is in existence already, and Ontario has a network for age-friendly community initiatives, and that's a group of representatives from across the province that get together to discuss like work. So we'll join that and participate in that initiative. We will seek out and share out funding opportunities. So that's for work to be done in the community, by the community, or also by the city. And we will seek out opportunities to share the age-friendly community strategy with York Region and other community partners. Some of the information we collected, we will certainly pass on to the people that are responsible for those actions. So I thank you for your attention to my presentation. We look forward to taking our age-friendly community strategy forward and getting to work on that. And I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Karen. Much appreciated. It was a great presentation. Particularly like the icons. They're fabulous.
They're fun.
They're fabulous. I love them. Thank you very much. Okay, so I see joining us online is Maxine Di Giovanni, and we also have Councillor Davidson, as I mentioned, and our Vice Chair Lopa Banerjee has joined us. Welcome. So we have this. We have the presentation in front of us. If someone could please, if a member of committee could bring aid that the presentation from Karen Ash, Manager, Recreation Programs regarding the City of Richmond Hill's age-friendly community strategy be received, all comments be referred back to staff. If we could move that onto the floor, please. A member of, thank you very much. Ted, moved by Ted. We are now open on the floor. We will vote on it later. Let me make my list. Do I have any members of committee who would like to comment? Bless you. Anybody here sitting at the bench? No, not seeing anybody. Anybody online? Councillor Davidson, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And I doubt there's anyone on this committee or council or anywhere that would disagree with these recommendations. But my question is there, what are I feel for the affordable housing in particular, are we starting to think in ways we haven't before that might start solving some of these issues? Are we, accessibility housing and affordable housing, that's one thing, but for people that are even struggling with, if they even find an apartment and it's not suitable for their needs in terms of mobility, is there anything new on the horizon that's going to help us actually, as council and city, take action on the big items like that? It's always great for us to all say we're going to try, but I mean, I guess I'm looking for a bit of hope here that there are some solutions that we're going to really try new things moving forward.
Thank you,
Through
Councillor
you, Madam
Davidson.
Chair.
Thank you. I agree with you. I think I agree with that. And one thing I would add is I know that according to our planning, 3 to 4 story buildings, which are considered low rise, such as, and that includes townhouses, are not mandated to have elevators. So right there, that's a problem, because a lot of individuals who would need that housing might also require the elevator. So over to you, Karen. How can you answer Councillor Davidson?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the question. The work of the age-friendly strategy will work collaboratively with other strategies that the city is already working on. And through our age-friendly community council, we'll continue to engage with the community to gain feedback and input and ideas and work through some of those issues. But we will be doing that in collaboration with the work that the city is doing through planning for the affordable housing and accessible housing. So the answer is yes, but it will be a collaborative project. I don't believe that we'll need to work with other structures within the city to move those ideas and those projects forward.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Anything further?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to say, as a member of council, I encourage anyone on staff or anyone listening to this, like, please feel free to suggest to me, to Karen, to anyone, ideas you have on solving some of these issues, because we don't build houses. The council, the city doesn't build housing, but I feel like there might be some really great ideas out there from anyone who has them. I just want to implore people to be part of this consultation, people who work at City Hall, people who are at home. Really, nothing's off the table for me. So please, everyone, think about ways we can solve some of these massive issues and hopefully not keep hoping they improve. I really emphatically hope we can make a dent in some of these big issues. That's my comment. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, first round, I see Vice Chair Banerjee's hand is raised. Go ahead, Lopa.
Hi there. Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to continue, or I would like to kind of comment on what Councillor Davidson said. Is there a way maybe we can put up the request on the Richmond Hill website and request everybody to put in their comments? We cannot do a roundtable because we are reaching out there. We are so many people in Richmond Hill. So instead of the roundtable, maybe we put it up, the request to put in comments on the Richmond Hill site, and it also gets documented if we are putting in our ideas in there.
That's a great question, Karen.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we do have one of the web pages on our city for our older adult programming, as well as for the age-friendly strategy. So I'm sure we can include something on that web page to continue to gather feedback and to give people an opportunity to contribute.
That's a great idea, and communications can help us make sure that everybody knows about it. Anything further, Lopa?
Thank you so much. Through you, Madam Chair, again, if it is possible to have, how we have print media too, because I know a lot of our community members are not, they do not get to know about all these things until and unless they are on the website. So maybe through the print media, the every Friday papers that we get, if we can put up there, that would help. I think that would be another good idea as well. But a lot of the community, a lot of the geriatric community, they love reading newspapers. So that way they would know that even they can contribute to these ideas. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Lopa. They do indeed. Unfortunately, our local newspaper, like
Mhm.
all other local newspapers across Ontario, now does not have a hard copy. It is only online. So that poses a problem as well. But perhaps we can think outside the box. The Richmond Hill, the newsletter that comes by, the hard copy,
Yes.
every so often. I think, what is it, 3 times a year or twice a year? I'm not sure.
3, Madam Chair, we do still do some printed materials for our
Yeah.
adult 55 plus programming. We
Right.
have a newsletter that comes out quarterly, and then we have posters and communications in the community centers. So certainly there are still printed materials available that we can add to.
That's great. Thank you. I think that'd be a really, really good idea. Okay. Anyone? Sherry, go ahead. You're next.
You hear me? I actually sit on the Accessible Housing Network as a steering committee member. And that is a national group of members of people that are interested in seeing accessible homes built. And just because Councillor Davison was asking, what can we do? And there are some initiatives that we have a petition open for the federal government to move for the federal government to push for a universal design for all housing at a national level. And I'm certainly happy to share that with this committee. And if everyone could sign and share with other like-minded individuals, that will help make a difference. And another thing that the Accessible Housing Network is working at, getting the Ontario government to change the Ontario Building Code so that homes were built accessible. Because right now homes are even condos are built to be visitable. That doesn't mean that you can use the washroom or access the sink, and all units in multi-unit dwellings should be built accessible so that anyone can use it at any time. Because you don't want someone, let's say at the worst time of their life, all of a sudden you're going to your job, you're working, and then you have a car accident or you get hit on a bike. And the next thing you know, you cannot return to your home.
Mhm.
And that is, housing is something that is a human right, and we need to do better for these are actions we're asking for new builds in the future. So I'm happy to share that information by email, and we could share it with the committee.
Please, that'll be wonderful. Karen, are you in touch with Sherry's group? Have you had any contact with them at all?
I believe we have, through you, Madam Chair, I believe we have reached out to a contact with that group, but we can certainly, I'm happy to connect with Sherry and get that information.
Thank you. I think that's a great resource. Anything further, Sherry?
No, that's all. I'm sure you've met Sal.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got feedback. That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. That's a great point. I'm concerned about that as well. Having now a disabled husband, and I know that how difficult it was right at the beginning when he came home after being in hospital for 5.5 months after a near fatal COVID infection in 2021, 22. There were some things that were unreachable for him. I mean, we managed, and at the kitchen, he sits on his walker in order to reach comfortably, the countertops. So that works. But I agree with you. If there is perhaps a little bit more attention given to that through the developers and the builders, that's an excellent point. Thank you, Sherry. Anyone else on committee? Go ahead, Simon.
Just to add to what Sherry said, because I've been through this, simple things like widening washroom doors, standard bathroom doors, 24 inches or 22 inches, can't get a walker or a wheelchair through that space. You had to widen all the washroom doors in rooms. Changed all the doorknobs to lever doorknobs. City of Vancouver, I think a couple of years ago, mandated that any new construction had to be lever doorknobs to make it easier for people to open. People with arthritis, people with bad grip, couldn't get the doorknobs open. That's a simple thing to mandate in the building code to get make things at least a little more accessible, wider doors and better doorknob. It's not hard.
That's a great point. Thank you very much, Simon. Anything further? That's it. Okay. Yue, did you want to speak as well? Okay, press your button to activate your speaker there. The blue one. That's it.
Touch screen. First of all, I think what I want to mention is how to spread out the word to everyone, because let's say the affordable housing, maybe not everyone will go online to check. So maybe think about how to spread out the word that make sure everybody can hear it or just get to know it, where to find those housing that are important for them. That's first. Secondly, I think talking about the accessibilities within the house. Like one area, because I used to go to those like rehabilitation hospitals, their washrooms are really accessible. So maybe like, I'm not sure it's applicable or not, but I just gave an example that maybe we can use their ideas to their samples to build the housing in the future.
Yeah, good points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yue. I agree with that. And back to my story as well. The washroom, the bathroom, and the washrooms. Let's not even go there. And that was a whole other thing. And we should perhaps compel in some way. Might have to be done through the province, that stability bars must be built in to washrooms and bathrooms in any built asset, because they're absolutely necessary. Thank you. Okay, anyone else on the first round that I can see? Nobody wants to say anything further? Okay, so just from myself, how do we deal with individuals who their sight is not what it should be? So it's either fading or they are in fact considered to be non-sighted. Do we look at putting up Braille plaques? Because I know in elevators, we now see there's a lot of Braille, and that's fantastic. And a lot of announcements, what floor it is. I think those are other things that are so important. Do we do anything specific with regards to Braille? Just a question, not putting you on the spot, but just a question.
Okay, so I would, through you, Madam Chair, I think I would have to report back on that.
Okay.
It would, I believe, deal with the building code and our signage, and maybe Ryan and I could have a conversation and get back to you.
Yeah, that's good building
okay.
code. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then referring also to the washrooms, public washrooms. In my opinion, I think we need more family washrooms and more all gender washrooms. I think that's an absolute necessity. And I think that's about it on my list of questions. If members of committee can come up with any other questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to send us an email, and we will make sure that Karen receives it. So that's it. Anybody else? One more last call? No? Ted, yes, go ahead. You want to speak? Go ahead.
So far as Braille is concerned, I'm not sure how many people with vision loss actually use Braille. I've been legally blind since I was 66 years old, and the CNIB specialist said, as with any language, it's much easier to learn when you're young. And I guess they considered me over the hill. And the sensitivity in my fingers is probably not as good as, say, a 5-year-old. So I rely mostly on technology that I can hear. I use VoiceOver on my iPhone, and if I am in an elevator, I'm quite happy if they announce the floors. But otherwise, I hope there's someone there who can see, who can I can ask a question of. So again, perhaps CNIB or some other source can tell you what percentage of people actually use Braille. And I have a feeling it might be a sort of a dying language in some ways. The people who use Braille would not be happy with me for saying that. But, so that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you, Ted. Okay, so we have on the floor, once again, to Manager Ash, thank you so much for your presentation, and our thanks to the committee as well, and for all the work that they're doing on this particular topic. So we have on the floor, moved by Ted, that the presentation from Karen Ash, Manager Recreation Programs regarding the City of Richmond Hill's age-friendly community strategy be received with thanks, and all comments be referred back to staff. All those in favor, members of committee, raise your hands. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you. Excuse me. We'll move to the next item of scheduled business, which is 6.2. And we have another presentation. And this is from Marianne Young, our acting manager, Bylaw Education and Enforcement. And I see that Marianne is joining us online. So 6.2 is about accessible parking permits enforcement. And Marianne is going to give us the presentation, and that is read as that the presentation from Marianne Young, acting manager, Bylaw Education and Enforcement, be received for information purposes. So let's move to the presentation. Marianne, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to come to present to you today. As Councillor Slovitz the chair's already made it. I'm Marianne Young, acting manager of Bylaw in Education and Enforcement, and I'll be providing you with the information and some key takeaways related to the accessible parking permits and exemptions and how it relates to the community standards and enforcement. Next slide, please. So this is just the agenda that we'll be discussing. I'll be mentioning the parking control bylaw 402-89. We'll also be discussing the accessible parking bylaw, which is 305-90. I will also be letting you know how a resident can report a parking or a bylaw concern. And we'll be discussing some parking stats that we had for the past few years related to parking in a designated disabled parking space without a permit. And we will also be talking about the parking exemptions rules for accessible permit holders in Richmond Hill, and how we provide the public with the education and awareness to the residents concerning the parking permits. Next slide. So the first topic is about parking control and the bylaw for it. So 402-89, this bylaw basically, it regulates all of the parking that we do on the municipal roadways and the parking areas. We also do have some enforcement that we do on private properties, and the private property enforcement is usually for fire routes and accessible parking. At this stage, we do have city employees, parking enforcement officers that enforce and issue and monitor the city of Richmond Hill with regards to parking concerns. We do also have security guards, security companies that are contracted with the city to assist and patrol private properties when it comes to fire routes, accessible parking, any private property issues that come up. Sorry. Other issues, just the various parking offenses that we do deal with is the no parking and no stopping. We have the 3-hour parking limits. We do have overnight parking limits that we also enforce. There's no parking on sidewalks, interfering with winter events or in operations. That's a key thing coming up in the next couple of months. And another big issue with our parking control is the parking paid lots that we have at Lake Wilcox. And the main reason that we're going to be here, though, is including the parking in disabled parking spaces without permits. The next slide, please. This bylaw, which is the accessible parking bylaw that we have, it's 305-90. This one regulates the amount of spaces, the amount of signs, the signage, and the identifiable markings that all property owners have to have in their parking spaces. This bylaw also mandates that owners ensure that the spaces are in good repair, that they're clear from snow and ice, and they're free from all obstructions so that they could be used. The other issue that we do have with this bylaw is that the officers do have the right to inspect a accessible parking permit to ensure that they're valid and that they're being used appropriately. In most cases, our officers, when they do look at the visors, they do observe inside the vehicle to make sure that it's properly displayed and that they're either on the visor or on the dashboard. Officers sometimes do come across that there's expired ones there, or if it's being misused, or if there's any fraudulent permits. This bylaw allows us to confiscate the permits from people if they're misusing the permits. And all other bylaws related to accessible parking is actually referred to our other bylaw for under 402-98. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of explaining to you the parking permits and what exemptions that we do give people with accessible permits. So they do have up to 21 hours to park on a street that they wouldn't be getting ticketed for. They are permitted to be parked in a no parking zone. But with that being said, you also have to, they are permitted to be in a no parking zone, but we do ask them to be aware of their surroundings. Like if there's a fire hydrant, not to park in front of that, or if there is not to block a driveway, not to be interfering with somebody's driveway. So we do give them the permission to be able to park for 21 hours on a street in a no parking zone. We do have, but all other parking regulations that we have, they do have to abide by the rules. There is no overnight parking between 3 to 6 unless you have a temporary parking permit. They can't be in a no stopping in a fire route. They can't be parked on a street whenever it's a winter event or when there's winter maintenance happening. Lake Wilcox paid parking lots. In this slide, I do say it's for non-residents. We do have a program where we do allow for residents to obtain one free parking permit to park in Lake Wilcox. So that's another option where somebody can use their accessible permits to gain another permit for it. And it's just a general thing to let people know that just because you have the accessible permits, you do still need to make sure that you're not obstructing a sidewalk, because then it could still affect somebody that needs to use the sidewalk, whether it's a stroller or somebody in a wheelchair or somebody trying to walk on a sidewalk. So we do ask that the sidewalks be kept clear and not to park in front of a fire hydrant or close to an intersection. Next slide. This one's just to explain to when you're reporting a concern, we do ask residents if there's any parking concerns, they have to contact our parking control, which is 905-771-8860, or you can send an email at parking@richmondhill.ca. There is some situations where bylaw complaints may need to be submitted. You can also reach out to our bylaw department for any encroachment issues that may come up. It's 905-771-0198, or you can contact it through email at bylaw@richmondhill.ca. And then next slide, please. So this is just some stats that came up from 2019 till the present day of warnings that we've issued and fines that we have issued for parking for vehicles that are parked in a designated disabled spot. So you can see how that between 2020 and 2021, the numbers were a bit lower due to COVID. But since COVID's opened up, we've noticed that there has been more of a trending where people have been using the parking spaces. Our officers are out there. They are issuing warnings. In most cases, it is fines that are being issued. And the key thing that at the end of each year that we do donate 50,000 of parking revenue is granted to the Richmond Hill Mobility Foundation each year by council to fund mobility initiatives. Next slide. And just to get it out to the public, we do try to put it in the Liberal newspaper ads, or whether it's online. We do have my Richmond Hill residents newsletters that we do have out there that we try to advertise to people. Just recently, the Mackenzie Health Center has did a campaign over September just to make people aware about the accessible parking. And our city website also does indicate the rules and regulations when it comes to accessible parking and the usage of it. And the next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry, this is my first time doing this, but thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you. And if you have,
Mary.
Please let me know.
Thank you, Mary Ann Young. We are very happy that you joined us, and also very happy to be your guinea pigs. Well done. You did a good job. Okay. Could I have a member of committee please move item 6.2 forward so we have it on the floor for discussion? Thank you, Simon. Moved by Simon. Okay, Simon, as the mover, do you wish to say anything? Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions for Marianne. Are there any plans for on-street accessible parking spaces? I've been through a number of communities in Eastern Canada, especially Maritimes and in the US, where there were designated handicap parking spaces on the street mixed in among the regular parking slots. There are a few places where they have signs up. There are some in Toronto where residents have petitioned the city for them. And my other question is, are there any plans like the City of Toronto does for people with accessible permits to not have to pay for parking? I'm talking probably the only place we would pay in Richmond Hill would be like Wilcox, but perhaps that you wouldn't need a permit. You would need to pay for the parking there if you have a handicap permit in your car. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. That's such a great point. I agree with that as well. I think that some attention should be paid to people who have disabled parking tags, that they do not have to pay for paid parking. I totally agree with that. Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead. Next on the line is Ted Moritsugu. Yes.
I believe at the last meeting, Barry Monroe pointed out that Richmond Hill has a bylaw that basically says cars that have valid accessible parking permits will not be ticketed, even though they would otherwise be ticketed. He was saying that it was the same bylaw that Toronto has adopted. So perhaps, Simon, some of your concerns are can be met by that particular bylaw. I think if you refer to minutes of the last meeting, I think you would note that Barry did bring that up.
That's a great point, Ted. I do remember that now. Thank you. That's great. Anything else you want to add? No? You got it. Okay. If I could ask Brian, do you know anything about that? Are we correct then in saying that anyone with a disabled parking tag does not have to pay for parking or not be ticketed if they didn't pay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder if actually Mary Ann would be able to answer that better than I would, though.
Are you aware of that, Mary Ann?
I am not, but I can definitely look into it. My understanding is that we do allow for the no parking areas, but we still have to ensure that the safety part with the fire hydrants and things like that have to be. I'm not sure if if we're just talking on the street or if we're talking about Lake Wilcox, like with the ticketing on Lake Wilcox. Because if it's Lake Wilcox, I can definitely put that on the agenda to speak to management with regards to that, if there's anything that's in the next upcoming season, if it's something that we can look into.
Thank you. That's excellent. I appreciate that. And you can report back to us at some point, perhaps just through an email. Thank you, Marianne. Next person speaking is Vice Chair Lopa Banerjee. Go ahead, Lopa. You are muted, Lopa.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. And the question is for Marianne, through you, Madam Chair. So, Marianne, thank you so much for the presentation. And one of the slides showed that we can either call or email to report any kind of accessibility parking issues. Now, let me tell you, let me share with you incident where, and it happens every Friday or Thursday. I cannot tell you, it's a weekday. It happens that Elgin Mills, Young and Elgin Mills, the Loblaw, the no frills there, the delivery truck comes in and parks it in a way that all 4 accessibility parking are blocked. And this is right opposite to the service center area that you have at Young and Elgin Mills. I have tried so many times to talk to the guys who are there, with the trucker guys, the people for whom they bring in the stuff. Nothing has happened. There have been situations where even I could not park my car. And when I approached to them, I was, I think I can use the word that I was insulted very badly. I immediately sent out an email. I called, I left a voice message. I followed up till about 2 weeks after. There has never been any response, neither to the phone call, nor to my email till this date.
And was that to a bylaw?
Yes.
Parking or bylaw, Lopa? Okay.
Yeah. So that is where I'm thinking that I'm calling as a citizen, as a resident, and leaving a voice message. I'm sending an email, no response. Maybe it's the same happening with others too. And is there a way we can stop these delivery trucks or anybody to stop or block the accessibility parking for their own delivery process?
Thank you, Lopa. Yeah, thank you. Those are great points. Is Marianne still with us? There she is. Marianne, can you comment on that? Certainly, it's a concern that Lopa did file some complaints, and she was never updated on that. And I do think that there should be a way that we are able to speak to those landowners and try to do something to enforce that they cannot park in that position ever again, or they will be ticketed. And the thing is, someone has to be there on site to do that. So it's always a problem. Marianne, can you comment?
Through you, Chair, I will reach out to staff to see what's happened. I will open up a file to have staff investigate it and reach out to the No Frills, the business there, and reach out to this the manager there and discuss what's happening. And hopefully we can get an improvement on it. I will do a follow-up with you. I've got your name, so I can do a follow-up with you.
Thank you so much,
Marianne. Lopa, anything further?
Just one comment to add with it is that I will reserve my comment for now. Once I hear back from Marianne, then okay. I will continue. But thank you so much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Fair enough. You're most welcome, Lopa. Thank you. Do I have anyone else here on committee who would like to speak? Ted, go ahead. You are speaking.
Just for clarification, is this a no frills on Bernard Avenue, not on Elgin Mills? I believe there's no frills. There used to be a Loblaws on the south side of Bernard Avenue, just east of Yonge.
Okay, so that is the one. Lopa, you are nodding. Thank you. Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Ted. Thank you. Anyone else? Hi, Ms. Councillor Davidson, one moment. Just let me check my bench here. Nobody. Councillor Davidson, you're up next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I just wanted to say, sometimes reaching out to your councillor gets faster results. I know I've taken calls about stuff like that. And I think Scott, is that word two? Whichever word
Yes,
that
it
is. So I'm
is.
not, I think it's word two. That's
It
Scott
is.
Thompson. But honestly, we're usually more than happy to either call bylaw on your behalf or even make a call to the establishment. So if you need quick action, sometimes it really helps to reach out. I feel we're pretty responsive, at least I think Karen would agree. So just another idea. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's good. It's a good shortcut. Use us. That's why we're here. Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Okay, one more check here. Seeing none, no one else online wishes to speak. Okay, so I just have one comment, and that is those of us who use the disabled parking tags, I've noticed that not all parking spaces are oversized. Some of them are the same size as a regular parking spot, and they don't even have the yellow hashing, zebra hashing on the side, so that it gives the disabled person the opportunity to have a much greater movement. And that has happened with us many, many times, and I'm sure other members of committee have feel the same way. Do you know, Marianne? And because I can't think of it offhand, but when we plan for parking, whether it's underground or at grade, is there a specific size? Do you know that is regulated, or is it just, if they've got enough space, they'll make it extra sized, extra large?
No, there is a specific size it has to be. Fortunately, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can do the research for you. But there is a specific size that it has to be.
Thank you. 12 feet? Okay,
Yeah,
Simon says 12 feet.
I believe
Okay. Because I have definitely been in some that are absolutely not wide enough. They are the size of a regular parking spot, and that just doesn't cut it. So that's also something that we should always make sure from a council perspective, that when there's a new build, we should make sure that all those disabled parking spots are indeed the 12 feet, and they are oversized. So that's all that I have. One last check for anybody? No? Okay. Marianne, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate your presentation. We have a motion on the floor. It was moved by Simon. Thank you. Sorry. We're moved by Simon Waldman. And that is 6.2A, that the presentation from Marianne Young, Acting Manager, Bylaw Education and Enforcement, be received with thanks for information purposes. All those in favor? Committee members, raise your hand or not. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, we come to the next item, last item on our agenda, 6.3. And this is an update from Brian Inglis, who's our Legislative and Special Projects Officer. He's here with us in chambers today. The 2022 status report on the 2018 to 2022 multi-year accessibility plan. And this presentation will be 10 minutes. And thank you, Brian. Go ahead.
Thank you and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Yes, my presentation today is on the 2022 status report on the 2018 to 2022 multi-year accessibility plan. The draft report was attached to your agenda, but I'll just be giving a brief summary of the report and seeing if members have any comments or questions about it. Next slide, please. So just for some quick background, as you may remember from my previous presentations, under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or the AODA, the city is required to establish, implement, and maintain a multi-year accessibility plan, or MyApp for short. And we're also required to report on the progress made under that plan each year. So last year, 2022 was the final year of the previous plan, which covered 2018 until last year. And this report that you've seen the draft of confirms that all the initiatives under that plan were completed or implemented as planned. Subsequent reports after this one will reflect the approach established under the new 2023 to 2027 MyApp that the committee reviewed earlier this year. Next slide, please. So the status report is divided into sections that is based on the structure of the plan itself. The first major section is accessible customer service. So in 2022, some highlights reported on are that our Access Richmond Hill space retained the accessibility configuration and features that they established earlier in the plan. No issues were brought to our attention about accessibility in that space. Our inclusion services team reported on helping many residents, mostly children and young people, to enjoy recreation programs. Their work is outlined in much greater detail in the report itself, and they are also currently expected to report to this committee at an upcoming meeting with more details and for an opportunity to engage directly with the committee. The Richmond Hill Public Library reported a few highlights. So program offerings on such topics as mental health education, newcomer support, and support for lower vulnerable income adults. In their collection, they continue to increase the number of accessible formats available and to try to make items available in multiple languages. And they offer a visiting library service for homebound customers. And again, similar to inclusion services, there's a bit more detail on all of those points in the report itself. And we're also having discussions with the library about engaging directly with the committee at a future meeting. Next slide, please. The next major section of the report is based on providing clear and accessible information. So earlier in the period of that report of the MyApp, we did an extensive amount of work to make our website and our electronic documents accessible. So we continue to follow the practices implemented under that work, and we've had success with those. Some additional resources in 2022 were remediated for accessibility and made available on our website. So for example, some historical council and committee materials from previous terms are now available on our website in accessible formats. And staff throughout the organization continue to be supported however they need with tools and training to make their documents compatible with assistive technology online. Next slide, please. The next section is based on the city's accessible employment practices. Again, in this area, we a lot of the work we do is just continuing things that we've already implemented. So really, even before the previous MyApp, the city has been committed to an inclusive and barrier-free application and recruitment process. We remain committed to that. We also offer our employees accommodation plans and individualized emergency response plans, hoping that all employees can contribute without any barriers and with peace of mind. Some new work that was expanded last year relates to the mental health and wellness resources available to our employees. So some highlights on those include new health coaching resources, family wellness webinars, and personal wellness assessments. Next page. Next slide, please. The next major section is accessible design of public spaces. So actually, under the original plan, at that time, there were no specific projects scheduled for completion in 2022. However, of course, all of our projects that were completed in 2022 follow the accessibility standards that we've been following. There were 7 walkway and sidewalk projects completed and 5 park and playground projects completed. Those specific projects are listed in the report, but as you would recall, the manager of design and construction, Mohammed Kashani, also reported on these projects in detail earlier this year. Next slide, please. So the last major section of the plan is general accessibility initiatives. So in 2022, as with the rest of the term of the plan, the Office of the Clerk provided support to other departments to make sure that their services were accessible and they were able to respond to requests for accommodation. And of course, we had two citywide elections in 2022, the mayoral by-election and the municipal elections. We conducted these according to accessibility plans. And those plans, some key features of those plans include making sure all of the information on the city's website is accessible, offering a variety of ways to contact the elections team for individualized assistance if needed, fully accessible locations for voting and candidate nominations. Our internet voting platform, we did ensure with our vendor that it meets the highest industry standards for web accessibility. And we offered dedicated assistance for retirement and long-term care residences according to their needs and circumstances. The actual plans for the city's elections, as well as other accessibility resources, can be found on the city's website on the elections resources page. There's more information available there. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, between this report and the previous 4 reports, we did successfully implement the 2018 to 2022 MyApp. The 2023 to 2027 MyApp, which, as I mentioned, the committee reviewed earlier this year, is designed to build on that progress. Future reports will reflect the approach outlined in that new plan, which includes greater flexibility to focus on the priorities identified in consultation with this committee. Next slide, please. So thank you. I'm happy to take any of your questions or comments. And as I mentioned a couple of times, future reports will be more responsive to priorities we identify here. So even if you don't have any questions about the work from last year or what I've described today, if you have any input on what you would like to see in future reports, I'm happy to hear that now as well.
Thank you, Brian. Great presentation. Could I have a member of committee move item 6.3A and B forward to the floor so we can have discussion, please? Thank you, Sherry. Moved by Sherry. As the mover, you are entitled to go first.
Thank you for I had the privilege yesterday to go to a tour of accessible parks in Simcoe region, and it was held by a company called ABC Recreation, and they design accessible playground equipment. It was actually a really incredible tour of what they've done in Innisfil and Barrie. And they have designers, ABC Recreation has designers, people with physical disabilities designing this equipment in mind. It was really, really impressive. And they had many suggestions that they showed us that were ways to even adapt existing playgrounds that are inaccessible with little minor things, like if there's a playground with wood chips, there could be a curb cut going into the playground so that someone could go down in a wheelchair onto even wood chips, which isn't an ideal solution, but they had many, they had so much to share, and there was municipalities there from across like Ontario that had come to see this presentation. I don't think there was too many municipalities from York region there. I did ask them if they could come and do this kind of a demonstration down here. I think they actually would be interested if someone in York region wanted to kind of take this on. So I wanted to share that. And I have one more thing. Is that okay?
Okay, of course.
The Inclusive Recreation Fair that I was at on the weekend, I met a dad there that has a son. They live in Richmond Hill and they access the Oak Ridges pool. And he said that every time they go there, there's no one there that knows how to work the Hoy lift. And the table at the Oak Ridges pool isn't strong enough to hold the weight of his son. He's over 100 kilos. So he said he did put in like some concerns. I'm not sure where. So that's kind of like just a resident's complaint. He also said the table actually should be an up-down table like they have at Newmarket Mall, because he can't lift his son to put the, the net or the underneath him. So
Sling.
yeah, the sling. Yeah. So that I'm not sure where to bring that kind of attention to. Would that be to the counselor or?
Have our Ward 1 councillor with us, and she will definitely contact you if you can. Councillor Davidson, contact Sherry offline, get more information, and I know that you will do whatever what needs to be done.
Can I with this dad by email? I told him I would raise it.
Thank you. I'll leave that up to Councillor Davidson. And do you want to say, are you up? Okay, go ahead. You're up next.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, if you can either give my email, carol.davidson@richmondhill.ca, to the parent, or email me and tell me their email and I'll reach out. Can I ask something? And forgive me for not knowing. Is it?
Go ahead.
And I feel like this is a safe place I can ask this question. Absolutely. Is it considered inappropriate if staff from the gym could help lift? Like, is it disrespectful for other people to help someone who needs help in and out of the pool, or otherwise use human power rather than a lift? Is it an indignity to ask if they had folks that could help when they need it? Like, is human help here rather than a lift? I know we have human help almost right away. My question is, can you educate me is that acceptable as an interim measure? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sherry, can you help?
I think that there is a lift and there is equipment, and that we really should make sure that people there that we can make function use it. This is a very way, and even with another person, someone would be injured. I think that it needs the proper equipment, and since we've already invested in it and it's there, and there could be, maybe they need an improved table, but I liked your thoughts. Sometimes we do have to think outside of the box, but I don't think in this situation it would be the best answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm just thinking, well, anyway, I look forward to hearing from you or from that resident, because we'll figure out if I thought maybe it was the equipment itself was insufficient, but if it's a training issue, absolutely no reason to have that equipment without everybody knowing how to use it. So thank you so much for raising it, and I'll do what I can. Hopefully I'll hear from them soon.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Brian, can you add to that at all? Do we know? I know there would obviously be a third-party liability issue here if with other human beings helping. That I understand. But as Councillor Davidson was saying, would it be considered an indignity? Do you know, or is that help acceptable?
Yeah. So a few things I can say about that. So all of our employees do receive accessible customer service training, and some of the suggestions in that training are to just ask someone if they need help. Right. It may be in some cases disrespectful to assume someone needs a particular type of help and to just offer that help. So maybe staff could just ask if there's something they can do to help in a situation like that. But I also think that Sherry made a very important point about safety. Like, I mean, I think you would maybe even find in medical settings that people without certain types of training shouldn't really be helping people physically get on and off things unless they're, confirmed to be capable of doing that. So there might be some risk both to the resident and to the staff to do that, but that might be something to keep in mind. But yeah, I think to answer your main question, I'd really just ask someone if there's something you can do to help is probably the best way to handle it.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And perhaps you could through our community services, through Don or Dan, you could make them aware of the Oak Ridges pools problems and make sure that we don't have that anywhere else, like Richvale or Bayview Hill, any other place that we have an indoor pool. So we can use that as a jumping board to make sure that our other pools everybody knows what they need to be doing here and that all of our equipment is okay. Great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Okay. Anybody on committee wants to speak? Yue, go ahead.
Thank you. I know on the presentation that you mentioned about the employment barriers, remove employment barriers. One thing is because I'm doing job searching, but through the time until now, I feel like I have applied many applications online for jobs, but like it's hard for me to disclose. It's not about I don't want to disclose my disability, but the important is if I disclose them, that maybe they will reject me, or if I don't disclose it. On the other hand, and if they find out that the employer will not be satisfied with me, right? But recently I've applied for TTC position. They are the only one that on the applications that ask me, do I have a disability or not? And they also ask me if it's visible or invisible. So I feel like I really sensitive because I feel like maybe we can advocate for this type of things to be put on the application, because it's this way I feel that will make people with disabilities applying for jobs more fairly on the same level. If we don't have that, it's very difficult for us. Yes.
That's such a great point. You had something that, those of us who are able-bodied wouldn't even think about, but it is, you're absolutely right. It's, do you have any special needs and what are there? And I think that it's a wonderful idea. We can certainly, Brian, make sure that we even have that on Richmond Hill applications. I think it would be a very good idea. That's what we know as all-inclusive, right? And now with our DEI strategy, it's certainly part of that. Okay. Anybody else on committee here wish to say anything? Anybody online? No, we good? Okay. I just have, I have one comment to make, and I know that I've made this at council before, but I'd like to insert it here with regards to accessibility for elections. Our past most recent election, there were certain buildings who did not have in the community area, that everybody can come downstairs from the building to vote. Now, I know in my building specifically at 18 Harding, we had always had that. And we have a lot of elderly people in our building. And to me, it's essential. I don't believe the Dynasty complex had it either. And that's an enormous condo complex. And there are, the condo buildings and complexes that I know in Ward 5, the other one would be Gibraltar. These are buildings that have a very high percentage of elderly people. And it is, I would say it's to our benefit to make sure that we have that in place. And I have spoken to Stephen about it, that these buildings do have in-house election voting, a situation, because otherwise I can assure you, because I know for a fact that in my building, there were a number of people who didn't vote because they either couldn't get to Richvale where they had to go and it was on their card, but or they didn't know. So that's something that I would like us to really make sure that we are fully aware of when we come to 2026. And that is there should be that kind of accessibility for everybody in those buildings, because it's to our detriment if it's not, because they will not vote, they don't vote. And most of the elderly do not have a computer. They don't have the online capability. So it's something that, I think we need to continue the discussion. So I just wanted to put that in there. Just looking around again, anybody, nothing? Okay, we're good. Well, those were my comments. So we have a motion on the floor moved by Sherry Caldwell. 6.3, that the presentation from Brian Inglis, Legislative and Special Projects Officer, regarding the 2022 status report on the 2018 to 2022 multi-year accessibility plan be received with thanks. And B, that the 2022 status report on the multi-year accessibility plan be posted to the city's website in accordance with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or AODA 2005. All those in favor on committee? I see all hands. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. That was greatly appreciated. Okay, so item number 7 on our agenda is the date of our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 2nd at 3 p.m. here in council chambers or online if you're unable to attend. Does that date fly with everybody here, or does anybody here have any problems? Good with that date? Okay, so we can confirm that at this point. No one online? Okay. Thursday, November 2nd at 3 p.m. is the next meeting of this committee. I want to thank everybody for your input. I really enjoy chairing this committee. It's so helpful, and I'm sure Councillor Davidson would agree from a councillor's perspective. It is so helpful to hear the comments that we need to, be more attentive to, and that's one part of this committee that I truly think that we are definitely helping, and we are definitely making people more aware. So my thanks to everybody. So the last item on our agenda is item number 8, and that is adjournment. Could I have a member of committee? Ted, thank you. Ted Moritsugu has moved for adjournment. All those in favor? Committee, raise your hands. Anyone opposed? No. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much to members of committee and staff. Greatly appreciated. See you.